Ready? Play.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening,
Good
depending on
day.
what time in the world it is for you. Well, Andy, what time is it for you? It's the same time for you as it is for me, right?
It is the same time as it is for you right now for
Yeah.
me. So all is
It
good.
will it will be changing for you in the next week or two, but before we get to that, Andy,
Okay. Yeah.
I want to just have a random conversation with you so our viewers and our listeners who will be thinking, if you don't mind me saying, Andy, maybe you're not a name that is known, but
No, I'm not.
maybe the voice though could and should be known.
Well, good morning. It is getting to be that time of year. If you know, you know.
So, Andy, just tell us, where are you from, by the way?
I grew up in Massachusetts in the United States and
Okay.
didn't really live in Boston that long. My broadcast career took me to Southwest Missouri, where I had a top-rated radio show in the Midwest for like 15 years. And then my wife and I moved back to Boston recently, but we recently relocated again. But most of your viewers won't know me from that. They'll know me from a popular stadium at one of the majors in tennis.
Hmm.
Welcome to the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, home of the 2023 U.S. Open. Please listen carefully to the following announcements. If you're headed to the U.S. Open this year, safe trip on the 7 train, safe trip down the Passerelle ramp, and for heaven's sakes, remember, credit card and photo ID in hand when you step up to the box office window. Pro tip.
Well, I think it's quite clear, especially given the T-shirt, but also by now,
Oh,
some
darn it.
people may.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
I
Some people
forgot
may
what I was
already.
wearing.
Don't worry. Some people already may have caught on to your voice anyway. What I want to know, Andy.
Mhm.
So obviously you're the stadium announcer at Flushing Meadows. Or do you do all the courts, or do you just specifically do Arthur Ashe?
So for many, many years, I was the only voice of Arthur Ashe Stadium. But last year, finally, we have a female voice in Arthur Ashe Stadium as well, and a
Cool.
name that many of your viewers may know in Blair Henley, who's
Of
hosted
course.
tennis events, all across the United States. So she and I sort of share the duties in Arthur Ashe Stadium as the voice of the event.
Andy, when did you realize, or did you fall into this profession? I don't just necessarily mean Arthur Ashe or the US Open, but
Yeah.
obviously you do many voiceovers. Did somebody say to you one day, by the way, you've got a great voice for radio, or what happened?
Absolutely the opposite. So I grew up in a radio family. My dad was sort of a household name in the Boston area. He had a morning show called The Lauren and Wally Show
Okay.
on WVBF, which became WROR. And I saw this guy, and it had nothing to do with his voice, but I saw this guy go to work every day and spend hours upon hours laughing, having a good time, meeting people, talking to people, coming up with new ideas, being creative. And I thought that is exactly what I want to do with my life. So when I graduated high school, I made an attempt at college at Emerson College in Boston, but I was already working part-time at radio stations and I decided to go all in. And so, like many recovering radio talents, what I did for years was I traveled around the country and worked at different radio stations, and then finally found a place where it worked in Southwest Missouri, and had a wonderful nearly 20-year run in that market on a legendary station called KTTS. But I was doing a morning show at KTTS when Fed Cup came to Springfield with Billie Jean King.
Okay.
And a friend of mine who was working down at Silver Dollar City said, "Hey, listen, they need some help. They need an announcer for this event. Would you consider doing it?" And at the time, I was moving into a new house and I just didn't have any time for it. I was going to blow it off. But if somebody recommends you to do something, you go and do it. So I was the voice of this Fed Cup tie between the U.S. and Israel at Cooper Tennis Complex in Springfield, Missouri. And on the last day of competition, this guy in a polo shirt and a ball cap tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, what would you think about doing this at the U.S. Open in New York?" I'm in the middle of the Midwest. I'm in the middle of nowhere. This is flyover country for these people. These opportunities don't just pop up. So I said, yeah, whatever, pal. I blew them off. And I went back to my life and got back to work. And about 2-3 days later, I got a call from the United States Tennis Association. And they said, no, we would like you to come out and audition for the voice of Arthur Ashe Stadium. And by the way, the next time the president of the USTA taps you on the shoulder and asks you a question, please don't blow him off. And so that's how it all began. Arlen Kantarian was like the new president of the USTA at the time. He was trying to, build this new image for the tournament. And he asked me to come out and audition for the role. And I got the opportunity to work closely with this guy, Tom Morera, who was a legendary radio voice in New York. And he'd been doing it for years, but he had that style that was like the Bob Shepard of Yankee Stadium he'd been doing this for a generation. And they wanted a little more energy. They wanted a little more passion into the presentation that they were creating. Not to mention they were bringing in live entertainers and doing Broadway aspects to the show, and Hollywood stars were coming in and they were a part of the production. So they wanted something that matched that energy back in 2002. And that's how it began. It was a happy accident in Southwest Missouri where the president heard me doing one of his events and said, why don't we get this guy to do the US Open in New York? And I've been doing it ever since.
And your first year, I think, was 2002, right? As a stadium
2002. Now imagine this. This is your first year doing the US Open as an American. I'm like a 25, 27-year-old kid. And I'm the voice of Arthur Ashe Stadium during these electric night sessions where the women's final is Venus and Serena. And then the men's final is Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi. Pete Sampras walks away with his final Grand Slam title.
Oh,
if you don't get hooked with that being your debut event as the voice of a stadium, I don't know what'll hook you. It was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, of course, on the men's side, at least, it's a bit of a bow and run in terms of the US Open and even tennis in general. I mean, it's been a while since I think a Grand Slam winner. I might be getting this wrong, but I'm thinking Andy Roddick, maybe the last men's Grand Slam winner. I'll edit this out if I've got it wrong.
So that was my second year. That was my second year. Andy Roddick.
So you were a good charm the first couple of years, but apparently on the men's side at least, it's gone off a bit.
And then in 2005, it was like an all-Russian final, and it was like, okay, well, wait a second.
And then the Europeans
to step up. Yeah,
and the Europeans pretty much since then. Andy, what about your day? I mean, so or even now, we're 10 days away, maybe from the start, a bit more, 11 days, 12 days from the start of the tournament. And of course, we've got qualifying week. In fact, by the way, Andy, it's funny I mentioned qualifying week. It was about this time last year. I saw a tweet from you. And I think it was your voice as well. You did that. You were in a studio and you were like, guys, the secret of US Open tennis is the qualifying week.
Best kept US Open secret. Fan Week. And it's happening right now. Qualifying for the 2023 US Open is underway. There's special player practices and events happening all week long at the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. And I'm not there. I'm jealous if you get the opportunity to go. But if you're a huge tennis fan and you want to experience the atmosphere of what a Grand Slam truly is, and you don't feel like spending all that money on tickets, this is the week that you need to head to the US Open. I hope you enjoy it. And for those of you that do have tickets, see you there starting next week.
Right? Do you remember that little post you did?
Absolutely. It's one of the most... I mean, if you're not, a hardcore fan with a very specific player that you favor and you just want to experience tournament and professional tennis at its finest at a Grand Slam, to save money and also to, experience a huge array of talent, qualifying weeks at these majors is something special, especially at the US Open, because they've created an event in and of itself. And what's great about qualifying is you've got the next generation, you've got the up and coming stars, but you've got also people that are probably in the twilight of their career. And, the opportunity to reach the main draw is, it would be a significant accomplishment for them. I can remember, Nicolas Mahut a couple of years ago. just missed out on reaching the main draw of the US Open. And this is a name that everybody knows because he was a staple in the main draw and had that huge match with Isner at Wimbledon.
Hmm.
But his kid, came out on court and gave him a big hug. And it was a moment that everybody remembered from US Open qualifying. Was he didn't make it, but it doesn't matter. His kid's there. His kid comforted him. And it was a neat moment. But as far as, saving money from the expensive tickets and everything else, qualifying week is a fantastic week to just see top level tennis from morning to night at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center.
Right. And in fact, this year, I mean, on the men's side at least, I'm thinking of some players outside the top 100 that are in the twilight of their careers, such as maybe a Gasquet,
Yeah.
perhaps Dominic Thiem. I don't know what his plans are, etc. But these are some of the players that might well be playing, or certainly in Thiem's case, probably their last US Open, and possibly in the case of Gasquet. So they may well be in qualifying, but you may, such as in 2021, get to see the eventual winner of the tournament.
Yeah.
As
Emma was
bizarre as
amazing
was.
that year. How do you
Yeah.
do that? I mean, how do you win 3 qualifying matches and then play your way into the final and capture the title? That
Without dropping
was
it. Yeah.
one of the most remarkable accomplishments in the sport that I've ever had the chance to see first person. It was amazing. And by the way, you mentioned Gasquet. How great is it to see him pick up so many wild cards this year and play tournaments? We had him as a wild card in Doha, and he brought the fans. I mean, people were really excited to
might
see
get a
that
wild card
backhand in
for
person.
the US.
Yeah, that would be
as well.
great. That would be
Yeah.
amazing.
I want to know a little bit about your calendar schedule and even the day itself or the days themselves. So right now it's middle of August. When are you heading to New York?
I will leave for New York the Friday prior to day one of action.
Got it.
So all of my colleagues are there already. They're
Mhm.
working the qualifying tournament. They're working Fan Week. Blair Henley, Kondos Mfukwe, James Anadakis, all those guys are busting their butt. And then I just sort of show up and find my perch in Arthur Ashe Stadium and do my voice work while they go out and really do the heavy lifting and support the tournament in terms of engaging with the enormous volume of fans who
The
show up.
tournament itself, of course, will start on the Monday. You said you
Correct.
fly out on the Friday. Do you go there on the Saturday or the Sunday to check things out, test the equipment, test your voice? I don't know.
So when you do a major like this and you have so many different TV aspects, and not only that, but performance aspects within the stadium itself, it is imperative that as a group, we test everything. And so on Sunday, prior to, main draw play getting underway Monday, we as a team, all these different organizations are in the same place, same spot, same time, so that we know our cues, make sure all the equipment is functioning properly, and deliver a top shelf show from the first ball up. And as somebody who sees it on television, you may not understand just how many stakeholders are involved in creating this production for fans who buy tickets, but for fans who are watching online and on television as well, because you've got announce cues, but you've got lighting cues, you've got video cues. I'm leaving half of this stuff out. Plus, you've got all of the technology involved with, the replays and the line calling, and all of that has to be fully functional by day one. And during qualifying week, they're putting the legwork in, getting that done. And on Sunday, that's when we do what they call a stress test to make sure that everything is ready to go.
Andy, so you do that, and then on the Monday, probably on Arthur Ashe, does play start maybe 1 o'clock local time? Although I might be thinking of Wimbledon, maybe midday.
It's around 11:30.
Okay.
So
Okay.
on other courts like Louis Armstrong Stadium and the Grandstand, they get underway between 11 and 11:30, and on Ash, we usually start around noon. Yeah, so it's like between noon and 12:30, and then we have two matches in the day session, and then we have 2 matches in the night session. Back in the day, we would do 3 day session matches and then 2 night session matches, and the U.S. Open became notorious for these really late nights. I can remember a Kei Nishikori match where we got out at 2:37 in the morning. And thankfully, people have come to their senses and made sure that those ticket holders are getting their money's worth instead of a day session running long. And then the night session holders are like, I didn't even get into the gates until 8:30 in the evening. And those two
Mhm.
matches went really quick. We make sure that, okay, in Ash, we've got these two matches for the day session and we've got these two matches for the night session. And hopefully there isn't much conflict between getting the day session ticket holders out and getting the night session ticket holders in.
Do you do all 14 days and night sessions?
I used to, and this was crazy. When I first started in 2002, I still had my radio show, and it was a morning show. So I would get to Arthur Ashe Stadium at 5 o'clock in the morning and do my radio show from there. And then I would do the entire day session and the entire night session, and oftentimes not get out till 1:30 in the morning, go back to the hotel, take a nap, and come back to Arthur Ashe Stadium and do it all over again. I'm way too old to function like that anymore. And thank goodness for Blair Henley, because now we split the work. It's all on a schedule, but there are some days where, yes, I'll work the day session and the night session matches. There are other days where I only work one of those sessions, and there
Got
are
it.
even days where I'm off. So that's over the past 5 to 7 years. A lot of these organizations have finally realized just how much it takes to do this work, that they've created shift work and added more voices to it to make it more palatable for us as contractors, as workers. Because I'm not sure everybody really understands that, when we are introducing athletes to the stadium, this is something that you don't see on TV, but we're actually providing a biography so that fans can
Mhm.
understand the career aspects of each athlete who's performing. And that's all work that needs to be written, needs to be prepared. And so to be able to do that and have a day off so that you can,
Do you do the
just focus
writing
on
as
your
well,
research.
Andy?
Yeah, all of us. So in fact, most of the talents who do this sort of presentation, whether they're announcers, MCs, or hosts, yeah, it's on them to do the research, hit the ATP's website, hit the WTA's website, and craft a story. Don't just list stats. At the US Open, we tell a story about each player so that it's a lot more engaging for the fans who are there.
Sure. Let's imagine you're doing both the day and the night session, perhaps on the Monday. We've already spoken about when the play starts. I mean, how many times are we hearing your voice? We're obviously hearing it when the two respective players, if it's a singles match, walk onto court. You give the little spiel before or as they walk onto the court.
Right.
And is that so? That's obviously so. Let's say there were 8 players involved in 4 separate matches. That would be at least 8 times we get to hear your voice, I guess. And what other occasions might we during the day or night session hear you?
So there's a couple lanes to this. As you're walking around the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, you're going to hear public address announces all the time, promoting, player book signings, player autograph sessions, sponsor related events. So you're going to hear my voice as you're walking around the stadium. But as far as the show in Arthur Ashe Stadium is concerned, whoever's in that chair, in that role, you're going to hear them bring on the athletes. Okay.
Mhm.
And then on television, you're not going to hear us ever again. But if
No.
you're in the stadium, you're going to hear us provide a biography for 1 minute for a player on one side of the court and a
Okay.
biography for the better ranked player on the other side of the court. There's a
Uh-huh.
few more house cleaning announcements that you have to make. And then when the chair umpire calls time, shut your mouth. It's all
Mhm.
DJ. So now DJ Triz, this guy out of Colorado, is fantastic. If you ever watch the US Open and the music comes into play and people start tweeting about it, it's Triz. Triz is unbelievable. He can find the perfect song for any moment. I don't know if
Mhm.
you saw recently in Paris at the Olympics, they had an argument going on between some of the beach volleyball women, and it
Okay.
was getting really heated. And so the DJ played John Lennon's Imagine. And everybody started laughing and it calmed everything down. And it was one of those viral moments where the DJ had an impact on this sporting event. DJ Triz makes that a habit. He's so good. If you haven't paid attention to the music going on in the background at the US Open, have an ear for it, because you'll hear a song and you'll go, "Well, that totally makes sense because of that shot in the last in the
Uh-huh.
last game."
So the DJ's thinking about that. That's nice.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's great.
Andy, have you ever had any mistakes, as we
Oh
call
yeah.
them in the UK, bloomers? Have you stuttered over? I mean, stuttered over a word is it can happen, but have you ever introduced the wrong play or given a wrong stat?
Yes,
Or
always. I mean, this happens, and when you have so many different stakeholders involved in productions, mistakes are going to happen. You prepare as best as you possibly can. You let everybody know that this is the order and this is the way things should go. But, mistakes are going to happen. And of course, the Twitter sphere and the universe is going to say, oh, these people
Mhm,
are idiots. But I mean,
mhm.
it's part of what you do. And you have to have a thick skin, and you make a mistake and you own it and you move on. But the most recent one that everybody loved to call out back in February was I was introducing um, it was RBA. It was Roberto
Mhm,
Batista Agut, and he was playing Marton Fucsovics.
mhm. This is
And
in Doha,
so
right?
this was in Doha. Yeah. This mistakes like this don't happen that often at the US Open, um, because everybody on this team has been together for a very long time, and we're really good at working together. But at
Sure.
Doha, yeah, we had a hiccup where I started a read on RBA's intro, and Marton Fucsovics was walking down the hall. And these reads last like 15 to 20 seconds, where I'm just like a synopsis, a quick taste of career accomplishments or accomplishments in Doha itself. And I'm standing like on the other side of the court. So I'm not there when they walk. All I can see is the video feed. And finally get a glimpse of the player coming out of the tunnel. And it was like, oh, that's not RBA. That's Marton Fucsovics.
Mhm.
And it happens. It happens. And so you try and cover it the best you can. But it's just it's an embarrassing moment.
Yeah. I mean, listen, my role is obviously quite different, but yeah, it happens to me. I've misspelt something
Yeah.
luckily, Andy, your name is pretty easy to spell. So I don't,
Sure.
if I get
Yeah.
your name wrong, then I maybe I need to go back to the drawing board. But there are some complicated names in tennis. Copy and paste certainly helps. But for you, pronunciation of those players' names is imperative. I mean,
Yeah.
how tricky are they? I mean, do you go on the websites and check out the prawns and sort of say it over a few times and hope you're getting it right? Maybe even you get a chance to speak to the player themselves from time to time.
Exactly. So from 2002 to about 2008, it was a lot more difficult. But
Hmm.
the WTA, I think, first started it, where at I think they usually do this at Indian Wells because the players are more receptive and they have a little more time.
Yeah,
But they get them to pronounce their own name, and then they put that
yeah.
pronunciation on the website. So you can literally go to the website and check an athlete's player pronunciation name. The ATP has done that as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, oftentimes there's consonants or vowel sounds that we don't typically make in American English that are very difficult to replicate. So
Sure.
as I told the guys in Paris that were new announcers, I said, you just confidently screw up the name. Confidently screw up the name, and nobody will be the wiser, except maybe the athlete themselves. I mean, tennis, thankfully, I've been around long enough, and so I know a lot of these names, but I just recently did fencing and taekwondo at the
All
Olympic
right.
Games,
Yes.
and a lot of Hungarian names and difficult to pronounce Polish names. And I didn't have like the resources that the WTA and ATP provided. Until maybe the second or third day of competition, I had some names that were recorded. But even listening to these recorded names, it was difficult to replicate how to say it. But it's been my experience that people they understand. It's like Jakub Menchik of the Czech Republic had an incredible tournament in Doha, but he kept telling people his name was Jakub Menchik because he didn't think they would be able to pronounce Jakub Menchik. And
Okay.
it's they understand, and it's not important to them that I don't think Iga Swiatek is walking around going, that person said Iga Swiatek.
Yeah.
They
They just want to win tennis
they just
matches.
want to win tennis matches. Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever been, Andy, in a situation where you've been at a supermarket or at the
Mm.
airport or I don't know, any sort of public environment where you're just going about your business, but maybe somebody there. I mean, I think if I heard you talking, even in a sort of regular way, rather than you weren't at the airport going, we need to go to gate number
Novak
12.
Djokovic. Yeah.
Exactly.
Get your grapes here.
Yeah, but I wonder if it's ever happened to you in
Yeah.
especially in the last 20 years where somebody's gone, I know your voice, but I can't quite pick where.
So when I was, like a local celebrity with a local radio show, it happened all the time. I would be shopping at Murphin's Market and everybody knew who I was. Did a lot of TV commercials and stuff too. So even grocery shopping would take 35 to 40 minutes longer because you would stop and talk to everybody. But the great thing about this role and just doing voice work instead of being, the face of a brand or the voice of a brand in radio is you're like the Wizard of Oz. People really don't know. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We've lost John. See, these things happen. And I believe it's pronounced John Syilk. John Syilk, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, no. Well, anyway, I got to tell you guys, John's a good dude. He is. And it's awesome that he provides this resource and gives you the opportunity to get the inside scoop on some of the backstories regarding the sport of tennis. And I wish him all the best. As it says on the screen, hit the like button on this episode and subscribe to the channel so that you can hear from more idiots like me. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, what other characters and voices do you do, Andy? Well, there was this sport called Letway. There he is. Hey,
Andy,
hey,
did you
John.
go off that so
I
there
was
was a
at-
technical
I-
issue.
I know. I was entertaining myself, and
I'll see
yeah.
I'll see if I can maybe use that or salvage it. I'll let you know
it
later.
says it was still recording. So
Yes, and we are
you
still
know,
recording, which is good. That was my primary panic, was that the recording would have ended. But luckily we weren't live. You will be live. Let's go back to that question, anyone. We'll go from
Okay.
there. So yeah, have you ever been in a social scenario somewhere, airport, supermarket, whatever, and somebody's gone, I recognize that voice?
Yeah, it was common when I had the radio show, not so common when you're the Wizard of Oz and you're just, people don't recognize the face with the voice. But I have been in restaurants where I was doing a Davis Cup event or a Fed Cup event, and I've had people come up to me because they were at the event and the restaurant is nearby and they heard my voice and they said, hey, you did a great job today doing that. And that's always cool. I think the best story I have about this is as as a voice artist, a voiceover guy, doing the U.S. Open and doing these Davis Cup events, the players always heard me, but they never saw me.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I retired from my radio show, that gave me an opportunity to get out from behind the microphone and do some of these on-court interviews and talk to players one-on-one for the first time. And I was doing Stadium 2 at Indian Wells, and Bob and Mike, the Bryan brothers, were playing. Big crowd. Great house. They always, brought the energy and created an amazing atmosphere. And so I go down to do the interview, and I don't even remember what I asked, but I just started talking, and Bob's eyes got like this big, and Mike is like, no way. No, you're the voice. And they spent like the first 5 minutes of this interview just interviewing me, talking to me and telling the fans to give it up for the voice and all of that. And it was like super embarrassing for me, but it was cool because it made me realize that, I don't run into them often. I'd always been the Wizard of Oz, but they appreciated what we did as far as a production team and in trying to, create atmosphere in all these random cities across the United States, from Reno, Nevada to, Jacksonville, Florida.
I love the Wizard of Oz comparison.
Yeah.
It certainly does.
You're behind a
feel
curtain.
like-
You
Yeah.
are. You're behind a curtain, and I like it that way. I like to drive energy at events with just my voice instead of getting out there and trying too hard. which is, I think your viewers will appreciate that. You see a lot of people that get out there and they interject themselves a little too much, try too hard. It's nice if you can just do that with your voice, because ultimately the stars of all of these productions we're a part of are the athletes themselves. They're the ones who should be seen. They're the ones who should be featured. The voice just needs to drive the production.
You mentioned how you've obviously had a few late nights. I'm also thinking of Alcaraz Sinner, for example, a couple of years ago, which I think was probably one of, if not the latest nights at the
Electric.
US
Yeah.
Open. But yeah,
Yeah.
electric. Andy, can you still enjoy the tennis? I mean, whether you have a favorite or otherwise, I'm not so interested in, but just can you still, just sit back and really enjoy it? Because sometimes in this business, and to some extent I'm in it, sometimes
Yeah.
I do forget to sort of enjoy it because I'm too busy thinking what time's the next press conference, I've got an interview
Yeah.
or an edit to do. But can you still, enjoy it?
It's a different perspective, right, John?
Yeah.
Because as viewers who like to consume your content because you're giving them a behind the curtain look at certain things, or just having a conversation about athletes and their careers and recent accomplishments that they've had, they assume that you're kind of, when you're working, you're kind of like them. You're just excited about what's happening. But my responsibility, okay, it's a job, but my responsibility is to tell these athletes stories. So when a match is happening and it's going to run 2.5 hours, I'm really busy working on, matches for the next day, or
Right.
athlete stories for something else, or recording voiceover that's going out to the grounds, or, you're doing other things. Your number one priority is the presentation and the production. And also, making sure that your facts are right out of respect to the athletes and all the hard work they've put in to get themselves at this stage of their career. So, yes, there are moments where you can't help but be, captivated by what's happening in front of you. And you actually have to put everything aside and stop and go, my God, this Alcaraz Sinner match is out of this world, top shelf. But for the most part, what you're doing is you're busy preparing for what's next. You're busy doing the work required for, I don't know, there's a problem out at Grandstand, and they need a voice to tell people to go to this part of the tournament, or whatever,
There's a bee invasion. We've not had that in New York yet.
Exactly. Yeah, that was crazy.
I know,
We've had
yeah,
two
yeah.
bee invasions at big events in the United States.
I just love the way the umpire and then Alcaraz basically copied that, if you like. It started. I mean, the umpire just says a bee invasion, and then you've got Alcaraz saying, "Oh, there's we had the bee invasion," in his Hispanic accent.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've not had one of those. But there is the kind of thing that maybe, I mean, not necessarily a bee invasion, but maybe there's an incident or something, so you have to attend to those as well on the other course.
Yeah, you've got to be ready at all times. I mean, there's a lot of pre-recorded announcements, but maybe Billie Jean King agreed that morning to do a book signing at 3:00, and they really need to get this message out at 2:15. And so, okay, well, so you might be captivated by this match, but there's other stuff going on. You got to be ready for it. So you jump over and you record that real quick, and then that takes time because that has to be uploaded to this server, and then this person has to have access to that server to get it played out to the proper portions of the venue. And so, yeah, it's all encompassing. You're not just sitting there watching a tennis match. You're always on the go.
It's going to be your 23rd US Open, Andy.
Yeah.
I mean, has a lot changed since 2002, or is it still basically the same, or a bit of both?
No, it's night and day. In 2002, when I first started, we were all fascinated with these razor thin flip phones. Nobody really even texted each other yet. Email was like the new thing, and paper tickets got you into the stadium. And the thing that really drove the show was that voice that came down. Tom Morera was amazing. And that's, I enjoyed a couple of years of that, where the voice really sort of drove the presentation of what we were doing. The fan wasn't distracted. The fan was engaged in what was happening in that stadium in front of their very eyes. They were participating in real life. Okay. Now technology comes along, The iPhone comes out in 2007. Everybody has access to their own Facebook show in the palm of their hand. The distractions are intense. The stadiums themselves, it becomes more affordable to make every surface of a stadium a video wall. So you have all kinds of different graphics and distractions that you can throw out there, stats that you can put up. I mean, you can really make it an awesome visual candy store for everyone. So what initially in 2002 was like your voice was driving this show and everybody was engaged in what was happening has become, there's still the voice. It's still kind of like an anchor, but you have so many other things that you're looking at and absorbing, not to mention you've got this thing in the palm of your hand that's taken up every minute of your day, and you're checking your own stats on that. So when you hear the voice, it's like anything else, you're not even really hearing it much anymore. The fan is not as engaged in that aspect of the production as they are in being on their phone. And the people who talk about this the most are singers, performers.
Okay.
When you go to a concert nowadays, it used to be 25 years ago, everybody was living in that moment and they took home a memory. But now, instead of that, everybody's doing this the whole show. They're like videoing the whole show because they want the rest of the world to know where they are and where those people aren't. And that's the most frustrating thing about any of these productions, sporting events, concerts, is people have forgotten that, you know what? I just need to be here,
Live the
in
moment.
this moment right now, and experience this instead of trying to capture it all in this brick in my pocket, you know?
Sometimes, off at a tangent here, I can get more warmth from a photo. Just seeing a photo from 2003, for example, a concert in the UK or something, I go, wow, that was a good time. Yeah. And I don't necessarily, I mean, the videos are out there on YouTube for those events anyway, and I'm going off at a tangent. There was one year, Andy, in the last 23, when you were talking to basically just the players, I guess. And that obviously was the COVID year. How strange was that, 2020?
Bizarre. Oh my God. I mean, sad, really sad.
Because you're giving those introductions with all that oomph, I guess, as much as you possibly can. And we're getting it on the TV for those few seconds.
No. You weren't giving it oomph. You were playing to an audience watching at home. That's what you were playing to. And so it wasn't, the groundswell of cheering fans that you kind of have to talk over. And then it ends with Novak Djokovic. There was none of that. It was, please welcome 3-time US Open champion Novak Djokovic.
So you did give it a sort of a more somber tone.
Oh yeah. I think anytime you're doing announcing, you have to play to the moment. And the moment was not one of, I mean, I could have screamed into the microphone, but people would have thought I was crazy. It's you play to that moment and the audience, you play to the audience to where it's at. And during COVID, the audience was here. This is when this was a good thing, right?
Yeah.
The audience was there. The audience was watching on their televisions. So it was more of and thankfully I have experience in it. It was more of like a TV voiceover instead of a stadium announcer, and I think it worked. It was for the situation, it worked, but it was sad. I can remember after Naomi captured the title, I'm looking down on the court and they still had those big video boards up of fans. They were there.
I remember.
And she had her Kobe jersey on and they were just, she and her family, they were just sort of walking around this empty stadium. And it's like, hey, congratulations, Naomi. You just picked up your second US Open title. And no fanfare, nothing. Yeah.
Well, on this show, Andy, I can tell you now that we've had players and coaches, physios and stringers, authors and data analysts, and now we've had.
Wait a minute. I've even seen you playing table tennis with some rock star Polish tennis broadcasters.
That's right. Yes, I have. Yeah, they work for, I think, Canal Plus in Poland, and they call matches there. So. Yeah, that was a little bit of fun I had in Stuttgart.
I worked with them in Doha too. Yeah.
Okay. You've seen them.
So I was like, hey, I know these guys.
They're a fun
Awesome.
bunch, yeah.
Yeah.
And randomly, I run into them every 6 months at somewhere on the tour,
Yeah.
and I hope to run into them again too. And maybe one day I'll run into you, Andy. I don't know if I'll expose you from behind that curtain that you hide behind. I've actually, by the way, another tangent here. I played the Wizard in the Wizard of Oz in a school production, so I was there whilst Toto eventually pulled me out from behind the curtain, and I
And they
was.
chose you for that role because of your good looks, right? It
Oh,
was like,
definitely, yeah. I
all
mean, we
right,
have
this
that
is the guy we
expression.
need to make the wizard.
We have an expression in the UK, which is a good voice for radio. I think it was, or
Yes.
face for radio, a face for radio. I think it is.
That
where,
is the story of my life. And that's really, people said that about me for years. Man, you've really got a face for radio. Thanks.
on that bombshell, Andy, I just want to
Yeah.
say a big thanks for coming on board today, and
Thank you,
good
John. It's been a
luck.
pleasure.
Good luck. I mean, I don't know if you feel any tension after 23 years of doing this, but I imagine the first time you did it, there was some, like the first time you had to
I was losing
introduce-
my mind. I was losing my mind, but I just took the direction that they gave me, which was, listen, we need you to be a little bit over the top and bring some energy. And, that's changed over the years with all the technology that exists today. It doesn't need to be that, I don't know, over the top at times. But yeah, you still get behind that microphone and you feel it, because it's not just 25,000 screaming fans in Arthur Ashe Stadium. The world is watching, and it's
Indeed.
awesome. It's a
And the world
privilege.
will be watching in the coming weeks ahead. So good luck with that, Andy, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, John. And be watching the US Open, gang.
Especially qualifying week.
That's right. Qualifying
Get
week.
yourselves out there.
The best deal in tennis.
Cheers. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.